On a regular Wednesday afternoon, my husband Dan revealed something shocking. I was alone in our home for the first time in years, while my husband went on a week-long business trip abroad. I was apprehensive about being alone for that long, even though I knew it was his job. Dan grinned as he packed, kissed goodbye, and left, promising to check in every night. The place suddenly felt too big and quiet. The first few days went smoothly. I watched TV, walked the neighborhood, and worked from home. On day 3, everything changed. The doorbell rang when I was drinking tea on the couch that night. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was curious and uneasy. When I opened the door, Dan's best buddy Mark was smiling brightly. "Hey, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check in on you," he said, holding up a bottle of wine. I know Dan is away, which must be lonely. Dan and Mark were friends since college. Because it was easy and fun, their relationship lasted. I rarely saw Mark alone, although we did get together. We never got to know each other because he was always with Dan. "I see, thanks." I moved aside to let him in and said, "You didn't have to." Being a good friend, he shrugged. I didn't think much. Mark was like family. We sat, drank wine, and spoke about usual things. Mutual friends, work, and Dan's voyage adjustment. The genuine conversation made me laugh harder than in days. I realized that Mark had always been cute, but I had never seen him be funny and polite. Before I realized it, we had been talking for 2 hours. Mark's meticulousness and listening approach were endearing. It was fresh and exciting. It has been a while since I felt connected. Mark's attention intensified throughout the evening. Not unsuitable, but distinctive. We briefly had a different vibe. I sensed it, but neither of us said anything. It seemed like a dream, so I ignored it. He was Dan's best friend, and I was his wife. Mark would never cross that line, right? I quickly told Mark I needed to go to bed because the night had gone too long. He immediately smiled and thanked me for company. I couldn't shake the strange feeling after closing the door. Not intended to feel this way. The next morning, I felt odd, overthinking the night with Mark. I felt vulnerable without Dan, but I chalked it up to having company. However, this voice in my head was replaying the slight change in our atmosphere. I worked to distract myself. They invaded, unexpectedly. I was making coffee. I glanced at the couch where we had talked the night before. I was more concerned by thinking about Mark, longtime acquaintance, always in my background, a friendly face only. What changed my opinion of him? By afternoon, I needed to talk. I contacted my friend Lily because she was the only one who would listen without judging. "Mr. Mark arrived last night." I started trying to seem casual. "Mark? Friend of Dan?" To what end? Her inquiry was immediately curious. I assumed to check my progress. We chatted over 2 glasses of wine. Though lovely, I halted. However, she pushed. I sighed. Not sure. This happened, I can't explain now. Feeling like something, but not something. Lily was quiet, so what did he do? "Nothing," I shouted. "The issue is that there was nothing special. That was more like an emotion. As if we both knew something we shouldn't." Internally, Lily hummed. "Quite challenging. He's Dan's best pal. Perhaps only the wine spoke." "Perhaps," I replied. I secretly disagreed. Throughout the day, I attempted to forget the talk. However, Mark was always on my mind. It was ludicrous. He was just a good friend. Since I was lonely, I overanalyzed it. My phone buzzed as I ate alone that night. This was Mark's message. "I loved yesterday night. I hope I didn't linger." I stared at the letter, unsure how to react. I considered numerous answers before choosing one. Not at all. Company was nice. A few minutes later, he replied, "Glad to hear it." "Excuse me. I was thinking of returning tomorrow. Absolutely no pressure." I halted. Something in me wanted to refuse and stop this. The other portion, bored and alone for days, was tempting. I reassured myself nothing would happen, just another friend visiting. I stated tomorrow works before second-guessing myself. The following day was stressful. Always thinking about what I was doing. Was I preparing for an unpredictable situation? Or did I imagine it? Mark returned that night with takeaway. Like the other night, we ate and spoke at the kitchen table. However, our stress was much higher this time. Every chuckle and look felt heavier, like we were avoiding a topic. I felt my heart race when he stared at me longer than usual. As guilt set in, I quickly looked away. I thought, this is absurd. Dan is his pal. Nothing will happen. My impulse to let anything happen got stronger as I ignored it, and that was terrifying. The evening revealed that whatever was simmering the night before was still there. We avoided anxiety by talking lightly and making small talk. I spoke something I didn't mean without thinking. "Mark, do you ever wonder what would happen if we were independent?" He looked astonished, yet unsurprised. He replied softly after a pause. "I overthought it. That was surprising." I felt excited and panicked, and my heart raced. I apologize for stammering. I have no idea why I said that. Mark shook his head gently but solemnly. "Please don't apologize. I've had feelings too, though I don't want to spoil anything. You and Dan are sacred." His comment struck me, and I realized we were close to crossing an uncrossable line. The issue was severe, so I nodded. "Yes," I whispered. "I love Dan." Mark inhaled and reclined. "I understand and respect that. However, being near you might be hard sometimes. My attention is drawn to this relationship." We sat silently, contemplating the events. We couldn't go back after admitting something we didn't want to. Mark glanced at me before leaving. "I should depart before we mess up." I nodded and watched him leave through the door, speechless. After he left, the house felt even emptier, and I was alone to deal with my conflicting emotions. After Mark's second visit, I woke up scared and relieved. I kept thinking about our deep chat and how near we were to ruining my marriage, but I was pleased we realized our error. Dan called me after his trip that morning to check in. Though his voice was warm and well-known, I felt guilty. He said he missed me, his meetings, and his coworkers. Every phrase weighed on my chest. I reacted reflexively to appear happy and normal, although I was anything but. I was Dan's loyal wife in one reality, and Mark's emotions caught me off guard in another. I called Mark later that night to check on our relationship. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page without being weird, that nothing changed. I replied with, "Hey," to sound casual. I just wanted to check in. After last night, the opposite end of the queue paused. He said, "Yeah, we're fine." The easy tone of his voice was vanished. "Are you sure?" "I don't want our relationship to be strange," I said. Mark sighed softly. "Honestly, it's not odd. We should be cautious. Whatever it is, it's dangerous." I knew he fit us. "Yes, I concur. I don't want trouble." "I don't either," he said. "But it's hard. I've thought about you too much. I know that's wrong. Your husband Dan is my best friend. His candor left me speechless. Because I had experienced it, hearing him publicly recognize it made it more real. And I said, "Mark, we have to stop this. Whatever it is, it must end. I can't hurt Dan because I adore him." Mark lowered his voice. "Yes, I understand. I also don't want to hurt him." After a long silence, the situation weighed on us. I knew we had to relieve our increasing tension. I realized how hard it would be when I tried to persuade myself. We parted with an unusual sense of finality. It was the right choice, I convinced myself. Whatever our implicit link, Mark and I could only be friends. I couldn't shake the defeat. Our relationship had shifted. The days that followed flew by. To avoid thinking about Mark or my complex feelings, I worked hard and kept busy. Dan will return in a few days, so I wanted to finish something before him. Things didn't go as planned. The day before Dan came home, Mark texted me, "Can we talk?" Falling heart. Although I shouldn't have answered, I did. I couldn't help. I replied with a pit in my stomach. Later that night, Mark reappeared. I promised to have one last discussion to resolve things before returning to our normal lives. As soon as he entered, I knew it wouldn't be simple. As we sat on the couch without looking at each other, tension was palpable. To end the silence, Mark apologized. "Texting you was incorrect. I had no idea what to do because everything was hard." Shaking my head. "Don't blame yourself. It got out of hand. It should never have gotten this far." Mark looked at me intently. "I know. Yet I think of you. That's the issue. I feel this despite my will." I gulped hard as my feelings surfaced. "Mark, we can't. Dan is mistreated. No one treats us fairly." He nodded slowly. "You're right. Even if unfair, it doesn't simplify matters." A while we were silent. We felt everything between us, unspoken yet understood. I sensed our attraction and the want to give in to whatever was separating us. I knew we couldn't go back after we crossed that line. "No, I cannot," muttered to myself. "Not him. I cannot do this." Mark stood with his hair in his hand. I know I should go, but neither of us moved. We remained stationary on the edge of a precipice we didn't want to jump off. Finally, Mark left. Before reaching the door, he stopped and turned to me. "I care about you." However, I will not damage your union. He was gone after that. I felt relieved and sad as the door closed behind him. Despite my good judgment, it didn't seem like a win. I felt like I lost something important, something I didn't know I wanted. Dan came home the next day. Repeating his warm embrace was soothing. But I couldn't convey my inner disconnection. I smiled, laughed at his stories, and resumed our routine, collectively. However, something changed. Mark and I didn't talk again after that night. Silently, we avoided each other and let what nearly happened fade into the background. That was easier and safer. Tension left a mark, but faded. We never acknowledged it. The weight of spoken emotions can bend even the strongest boundaries. Even though I never crossed that cue, I knew I had approached it dangerously. We appreciate your video viewing. Join this channel for more videos.